Sarah grew up in Vancouver. She's an only child. Her parents divorced when she was young. They're both former hippies who always encouraged her to be open-minded. Her love of yoga and smoothies and organic salads makes her a bit of a West Coast stereotype. She's always been into acting. She was a drama dork in high school, and she studied theater at Concordia University. After graduating, she returned to Vancouver to try to make a go of it. Her first encounter with NXIVM goes back to 2005. She's living in a basement apartment in Vancouver and feeling unfulfilled.
This is around the time when I was into setting intentions. My boyfriend at the time was a filmmaker. He had made a film that got accepted into the Spiritual Cinema Circle Festival at Sea on a cruise. So I set the intention that I was going to go on this cruise and figure out my purpose in life, my real purpose. Because I was challenged in my relationship, challenged in my career. I had this idea that maybe I'd become a famous actor and use my celebrity to have a voice or have impact in the world. That wasn't happening.
Oh, yes, yes.
But then it was like, beer commercials, TV shows about vampires.
Blood on my taffeta, Carl, blood.
Well, you were going to the prom with my best friend.
It's like it wasn't the life that I had imagined. And then we got on the cruise, and the guest of honor and the judge of all the films was going to be Mark Vicente, the director of the film. What the bleep do we know?
Where do we come from? What should we do? And where are we going?
The more you look at quantum physics, the more mysterious and wondrous it becomes.
There was something really magnificent about science that I found intoxicating, because if we understood the world in a better way, and if we understood ourselves in a better way, that may be able to understand how all of this works.
I mean, What the Bleep was one of the highest grossing documentaries of all time. And then that night I sat across from Mark Vicente. At first I didn't know Mark was Mark, but when I figured out he was the director of What the Bleep, I was gushing about his film. And at that time I was really sick. I had a really bad cough, like a really bad loud cough. And Mark asked me something like, what would you lose? This is an ESP framed question. What do you lose if you stop coughing? And I had the awareness instantly that I had linked sickness and attention. I was trying to get my boyfriend's attention. I was like, oh my gosh, my whole life I've been so sick as a means for attention. And the next day I got better right away, and all I knew at that point was that I really liked and respected Mark, and Mark very casually talked about NXIVM, and there's this guy, he's the smartest man in the world, and he's doing this and that, and there's this community, and he underplayed it. If anything, I was more interested in working with him and doing whatever he was doing. Keep in mind, I just put it out there to the universe. What's my purpose? Oh, maybe this is my purpose.
She tells Mark she wouldn't mind checking it out. And what do you know? There's an NXIVM representative waiting in the wings.
So if it wasn't for her, I might not have even signed up. And she was like, I heard you're gonna do the 5-day, here's some paperwork.
At that time, I was living in a basement suite where my rent was $400 a month. So for me to spend thousands of dollars on my personal growth was obscene. But I really wanted to change. I really wanted to make that leap, so I put it on my credit card and signed up for the next training.
But by the time she gets home, Sarah changes her mind. The course is $2,000 US. That's 6 months' rent. So she calls the company, explains that she's an out-of-work actor, and she asks for her $500 deposit back.
She said, you're 27 and you don't have any money? Do you want to change that? And I said, of course I want to change it. So, well, how are you going to change it unless you work on your underlying beliefs around money? Otherwise, you're never going to have any. I was like, okay, that's a good point. And then I said, but also I'm an actor and I got to be available. I need to be available for acting because my agent might call. And she said, do you want to be the master of your own ship, or do you want to be waiting around for your agent to call you for the rest of your life? And I was like, good point. I want to be the master of my own ship. And then she totally sold me. I was like, and truthfully, I also didn't want to waste my $500.
This 5-day course is the entry point for most people into the world of NXIVM. 5 full days from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Vegetarian meals are provided. And Sarah takes hers at a cheap chain hotel in Burnaby, BC.
My first 5-day, I was picturing a large stadium type of Tony Robbins forum with hundreds of people. Rah, rah, rah. I walk into a rundown Holiday Inn.
You guys hearing okay? Not if you can hear me.
It's just totally underwhelming. Everyone's power suits are weird. And Nancy's first intro video, she's like, hi.
Hello, I'm Nancy Salzman. Welcome to your first Origins class.
Meanwhile, I'm like staring at her eyebrows.
Did you ever see the carnival game Whack-A-Mole? There's this little mole, and he pops up, and he has this like little grassy hat on.
Just the whole aesthetic and the presentation of the material was totally 80s.
So you take the sledgehammer and you knock down this mole, and you knock down this one, you knock one down, and another one pops up, and another one pops up. And does this sound like your life?
I was like, what? Where am I? And I was sort of like, you know, my parents are therapists. What are you going to teach me?
Sarah is not impressed. I've spoken with 24 people who have taken this workshop, and almost everyone says the same thing about the first day. It is very strange.
All right, so here's rules and rituals. This is the first class we do, and they said right from the beginning that we were going to be uncomfortable. But the most growth happens outside your comfort zone.
The first thing we're going to do, we basically bow when we enter a session space. So I would bow when we walk in.
Huddle, and 1, 2, 3. We are committed to our success.
We line up in rank order, and we do the handshake.
Give me your hand, shake my hand. So if we learn how to shake hands, we shake like this. You know, it was just weird.
Keith and Nancy have titles, and with their titles, we don't use their names. Thank you. Thank you.
I didn't like calling Nancy prefect and Keith vanguard.
When you go into a martial arts studio, you call the guy master. So what does vanguard mean?
Vanguard.
Vanguard means the leader of a philosophical movement. What does prefect mean? Prefect is often the head of a school.
And I was like, what the fuck regarding the sashes?
When you get the white sash, you're a student. When you get the yellow sash, you're a coach. Now, our conceptual founder, Keith Raniere, he wears a white sash. He considers himself a student of light.
I called Mark at the end of that day. And I was like, what the fuck did you get me involved with?
Let me tell you just a little bit about the reaction that people have to our program. Occasionally, we have a person who comes in, and in the first couple of sessions, they begin to really see themselves for the first time. And when they really see themselves, they don't see what they thought they wanted to see. And these people want to leave the program right away.
You know, you have skeptics and you have cynics, and I define them. I say a skeptic is someone who seeks to turn magic into science, and I'm one of them. A cynic is someone who seeks to turn good to bad.
Sarah says it's designed to weed out the people who have no tolerance for discomfort. People who might not be open to challenging the way they see the world.
And I kept on saying, well, just do another day. What's one more day?
He said, wait till day 3. Everyone has a huge shift in day 3. Day 3 is like really big. And it was sort of also like, well, I'm here, you know, let's just ride it out. And it was true. On day 3 is when I had my first big, like, holy shit. And that was in the self-esteem module.
What is self-esteem? And how do we measure it? Are there specific ways of raising one's self-esteem? Many people talk about self-esteem, but very few people really know what it is.
Self-esteem was explained in the working definition we use in ESP was self-esteem is the range of options that you have in a given circumstance. People with high self-esteem see possibilities. But most of the time you can't see those options because of what they called your limiting beliefs.
All of us have a certain number of these limiting beliefs, which is what we call disintegrations. The things that keep you from being all that you can be and from reaching your full potential as a human being.
The example I remember, I think Mark taught me this, if someone's a photographer and they have a fear of heights, they're limited to what they can photograph on the ground floor. That's their potential. If you unhook their fear of heights, now they can go on the Eiffel Tower. And then there's more possibilities.
Now, the average person has probably between 200 and 300 of these limiting beliefs.
There wasn't like a limiting belief that was unlocked. It was multiple limiting beliefs. I can be Sarah who's not controlling. I can have a great relationship. I can have the best career. I can have all these things. It was different beliefs I had around money, my potential. I didn't have love for myself. Hello? I didn't have belief in myself.
And we talk about getting lost in the movie. We're kind of lost in the role of our life. What you have to do is stop believing that that's who you are.
I thought that was just the way that I was. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, I can systematically evolve to be the ideal version of myself, to write my own character, versus, well, that's the way I am. Like, if I ever heard anyone go, well, I'm just not a morning person. I'm like, that's just a limiting belief. When you recognize that everyone has limiting beliefs, you just walk around going, no, that's a limiting belief. That's not true. That's bullshit. He could change that. I could change that for him in 45 minutes if he let me.
We believe that you can actually get rid of all your disintegrations. Every single time you integrate a disintegrated belief, you become more full, more whole, more rich, and become what we call unified.
ESP and NXIVM was a tool set to help people get there. And that's where I feel like I got hooked. I felt like I was soaring. It was like almost like a magic. I felt like I was getting downloaded a book of knowledge about people, about society, about the world in general. I really felt like I had this secret potion of understanding.
Here's the thing. Almost everyone I've talked to who's taken these entry-level courses say they got a lot out of them.
I felt like a cloud of veil had been lifted after my 5-day, and I could function in the world with better grace and ease. And I wanted that for everybody.
They tell me about their aha moments. NXIVM calls them integrations. A cult expert I spoke with calls them engineered epiphanies. Whatever you want to call it, the one that hooks Sarah on NXIVM happens while she's watching a video of Nancy Salzman. Nancy's talking about her daughter, Lauren Salzman, who would later become Sarah's friend, and how she always quit extracurricular activities whenever she found them hard. And Sarah's like, that's me. That's what I do. That's why my life is not on track. That's why I feel this way.
And that's when I was like, oh my God, that's why I've never really pushed through anything.
When the course is over, the facilitators give her a chance to fix this problem. They say if you're really committed to your personal growth, you can work your way up the NXIVM ladder on what they call the stripe path. Sarah sees this path as a chance to really commit to something. She puts down her credit card and she goes all in.